Welcome to another episode of Pixelated Zen Presents, Nostalgialess. Today's game is the amazing Spider-Man 3 Invasion of the Spider Slayers for the original Game Boy. At this point, they're really pushing the amazing part of the title pretty far. Developed by Bit Studios and published by LJN, released in 1993, Invasion of the Spider Slayers is the final Game Boy Spider-Man game. It's a side-scrolling action platformer with 5 levels, each comprising between 2 and 5 stages. Several of the stages are completely pointless and just in the game as padding. Those are the best levels. Spider-Man can jump, web swing, kick, or low kick, and that's about it. The controls themselves are terrible, making double jumping or wall crawling an awful experience, not to mention actually trying to attack anything. The story is almost non-existent. It's loosely based on the Invasion of the Spider Slayers comic book story arc, but you wouldn't know it to play the game. Each level, Spidey goes to a crime scene and robots attack him. All except the first level, where Spider-Man runs around Central Park picking on skateboarding kids and gentlemen out to read their newspapers. The first level really makes Spider-Man look like a dick. The boss of the level is an alien xenomorph, which makes no real sense, though it did give me the faint hope that the Predator was going to show up and make the game awesome. Aside from this really weird level, the game is fairly standard. You either move from one spot to another, jumping and web swinging to avoid enemies, or you're fighting enemies to clear the level. Stage 3 of the first level is one of the worst in the game. You must climb 2 buildings with precision web swinging and jumping, all while being bombarded by grenades from a flying robot, falling rocks, and random spiders. The platforming required to get to the top of the left tower is near Super Meat Boy hard, with none of the tight controls of that game. When you do get to the top, you have to fight that flying robot with whatever health you have left, and if you die, you go back to the bottom of the towers. There's only one level that's worse, and it's the 4th level, Stage 1. You're on a construction site and must fight 3 Spider Slayer bosses. The first is easy, the second is hard, and the third is near impossible. It took me nearly a week of playing the game in order to beat this level, and I never felt a sense of accomplishment as it just felt random that I had won. As mentioned earlier, there are a few pointless stages in the game. This is the entirety of a stage. There was really zero reason to have that in the game. It didn't further the story, the gameplay, or even the length of the game by that much. It just looks good to have a second stage number on your game, I suppose. The bosses range from extremely easy to game-breakingly broken. The 3 Spider Slayers were terribly hard, and I doubt most players will pass that level. Smythe, the end boss, is also extremely difficult and almost impossible to beat without cheating. Getting to Smythe is weird, as he has filled his base with men in wheelchairs, and I felt pretty terrible beating up crippled people over and over. Graphically, the game is a mixed bag. While the backgrounds look detailed and are extremely well done, with a few exceptions, Spider-Man himself is extremely dark and not very detailed at all. This also causes him to blend into the background far too often in the darker stages, such as Central Park. The bosses, most of which are robots with a few exceptions being Electro, the Xenomorph, and Scorpion, are about the same. Dark, undetailed sprites that get the job done but don't impress, especially compared to the backgrounds. For a Game Boy game, the graphics are pretty good, but nothing spectacular. Sound-wise, the game is good for a Game Boy game, but not very enjoyable in general. The music loops far too often, and the sound effects are barely better than Pokemon's Scream quality. Overall, the game is awful. I can't explain to you how bad the controls are, or the level of precision required in some levels, but believe me when I tell you that it's not worth playing this game. It was one of the hardest and worst games I've ever played on the Game Boy, and certainly the worst Spider-Man game I've played up to this point. Avoid the game like the plague, even if you can find it for pennies. Actually, I take that back. If you can find it for pennies, do it, but take the chip out of the cartridge and use the cartridge as a business card holder for your desk. It's the only thing that would make this game anything but a blight.